So homework last week. How many of you had a hard time saying positives to your children? Thank you for being honest. To whom? To yourself?
Who was the other person?
Your spouse?
Yeah, that was hard.
It was hard?
Yeah, and I've taken this a bunch, and I knew that was coming. I was like really struggling.
That's okay, and that's hard to be honest.
And that's all I have to say. So.
There you go. Okay, all righty. Did you listen to President Nelson's talk? That was also one. And to pray to know your spiritual gifts. Those were all homework assignments. To listen to President Nelson's talk, to pray to know your spiritual gifts, to watch your language, and 10 to 1. So how did it go? No one did it. Yes.
I did the find my kids' love language.
The love languages? Yes.
That was really interesting. We found a test online and
Yes.
we kind of each take individually. Even my little one, we took her in a room and we just asked her those questions so she could like not be influenced by her siblings. And some things just kind of clicked. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense, you know. Like my little one one of hers was receiving gifts, and we've been kind of talking about like not doing as much gifts and stuff for Christmas, but every time we mention it, she's the one that freaks out. No, gifts. And so I'm like, okay, she needs this, so we need to figure out a way to make that work with her. And then my husband and I decided to do it as well, and we found out we're complete opposites. His top ones are my lower ones, and vice versa. So it was interesting to see.
You know, and that's a really good thing because we tend, when you don't know anything about love languages, you know, you haven't learned anything about it, we tend to show love by our love language. So if we're saying I love you to your spouse with your love language, which maybe is verbal affirmations, so you're verbalizing, and his love language is gifts, it may not make him feel really loved. So it's just so important to figure out what their language is and then to say I love you in their language. Yeah. And it's important to teach them how to say they love you in your love language. It's sometimes easier for you to get that figured out than for them to get that figured out. So we're responsible to teach them. Not just expect them to know because we said it once. But teach them how to say they love us. Because they do. They do love you. But sometimes it doesn't come across unless they know how to say it. Yes?
I found it interesting that it was a lot harder to be positive to my children this last week. I don't know if it's because Satan knew that I was trying to do it, but it was like I felt irritated and grumpy with my kids rather than feeling the love that maybe I normally would have for them. So, I don't know. I need to work on it.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. Were you focused on the language or just in expressing the 10 to 1?
I was more focused on trying to help them feel loved and feel like they were important. And it was really, really hard.
Yeah. So this week you liked him, but you didn't love. You know, you loved
I loved them, but I didn't like them.
Yes, gotcha.
They were ornery and grumpy, and I felt ornery and grumpy, and it was like we were.
Isn't that amazing how Satan will sabotage every good commitment we make? That's great. Thank you for being honest. That's awesome. Yes.
I'm really sarcastic, so I worked hard on that this week, and it's really hard to draw back on that.
It is.
Like the little nudges, you know, like the tricks that you talk about, or I told you so kind of things like.
Were you raised with that?
My mom's sarcastic, yeah. No. Yeah, but my dad's just really quiet, so when I was in trouble by my dad, he was just quiet, and it was, so it's
just interesting how we pick up what we were raised with, you know, so, and that's a hard one to break.
Yeah, it is.
Just so you
really hard.
know, it's a hard one to break.
But, and I can see where my kids pick up on it really easily too.
Yes.
Just start doing it.
Yeah.
So it was, I think it's good to try and change that.
Awesome. Very good. Anyone else? Yes.
So, I have a son that is 10 years old who sucks his finger. He's got some difficulties in we have tried everything to get him to stop. He stopped briefly at age 3 and briefly at age 7, and then school kicks in and it just goes, he just can't stop. I walked out of here last week feeling like that's something I need to stop. It's a negative in my relationship with him. I mean, it's not a moral failing, but it's a negative in the way that we interact.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I left in tears thinking, I just need to stop. I need to stop pulling it out and saying stop, because it's just this negative interaction. And it was really hard, like Tika said, it was really hard for me this week to feel like, just shut your mouth, just keep it in. But I just noticed him, every chance he got, just kind of come cuddle up to me. And I was gone for a day, and he came running to me as I came home, and I just felt like, okay, I still don't have an answer. I've been praying for years for an answer on that one, but I don't have it. But I just feel like my personal answer was to stop. And just when I feel inclined to do that, instead try to think of something positive and tell him what I love about him. And it's been hard, but it's been good for me.
See, think about the idea that is your personal answer.
Yeah.
That too often we think if I get the right answer, it'll make you do what I want you to do. And that's not true. That's agency. And your right answer may be what you need to do, but what you do, it's giving him courage. It's giving him courage, and then he may choose to stop on his own. He may not. But at least if he starts getting razzed by kids at school, when he's in high school and he's still doing it, believe me, there will be some interesting comments made. And you then are a safe place. You then are his safe place. And that's what you want it to be. You want to be the safe place. So it's interesting when we get answers, whether we think there are answers, because too often we think our answer should solve a problem. But it doesn't necessarily solve their problem. It may be an answer for how we can give them courage so they can solve their own problem. Just something to think about. It's just a think about, ponder idea. Yes?
I do have a question about the choices thing, like giving them 2 choices. I have one kid that would just be like, neither, and then we'd sit there for 10 minutes. I mean, how long do you give them before they make...
Oh no, if they say neither, then they've made a choice.
Yeah.
There's choice A, there's choice B, and if choice C is I'm not going to make a decision, by default, you've decided that I'm going to decide. So you have agency, and here you've given me the right to make the decision. So it's not this game where you sit there, because then it's a power struggle.
Yeah.
It's I won't do it, so therefore, and you can't, it becomes this power struggle of them trying to control you in that situation. And that's not it at all. It's I will give you your power. You can make these choices. The other thing is when you get to C, you can ask, what would you rather do? And then you have the right to make the choice whether or not that's acceptable. So if you say you can do A or B, and they say, I don't want to do either one, say, what would you rather do? So, for example, if you say, would you like to clean the bathroom or your bedroom first? And they say, I don't want to do either one. Then you can either say, okay then, I think that you should start on the bathroom. I mean, you can change that. Or you can say, if you don't want to start on either one of those, which job would you prefer starting on? It's not, the choice isn't you don't have to do any. It's, would you rather have a different job? And they say, yeah, I would rather unload the dishwasher. That could be acceptable to you because it's something else that needs to be done. You say, well, fine. And would you like to pick your second job? Or would you like to, you know, you can, within the realm of choices, it's not that the first two were in concrete. You can ask their opinion. You can get them involved. But don't feel like your hands are tied because they didn't do one or two and then so now you can't do anything. Yes, you're still parenting. So if they don't like those choices, you can ask them what they would rather do. But you don't have to buy it. And if they say, well, I would rather go play video games, or I would rather go say, you know what, that would be fun. But right now, if that's not the time. So you can either choose these two, or here's a whole list of other ones. You'd pick two off this list if you'd like. So you can keep the choices going, but they're still within the realms of what's acceptable in that picture. Anyone else brave enough to share? Yes.
Well, I just took your challenge to go back and listen to the conference talk and list the promises, but I invited my husband to do it with me.
Really?
So that was really, I don't know, it was a whole different experience, and I listened to it in a different way just because my husband was there and we both kind of.
So what did you learn?
Well, I just felt like, because we've been going through our own struggles and trials.
So you're mortal.
Yeah, and we just made a recent move. We've only been here 2 months, and so it's been a lot. And I just felt like when we did that together, then it made us stop and reflect what we have and what blessings we have been given in that whole struggle, rather than recently we've just been seeing negatives. So.
Yeah. Where did you move from?
Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Oh, okay. This is a bit of a change. You'll like our winters better. Very interesting, and I'm very impressed that he was willing to do that. You know, that he's a good man. Yeah. Anyone else like to share? Yes.
So with the whole 10 positive things, and then I'd go and say, I had to stop and think, how can I phrase this so it's an encouragement versus a praise?
Yes.
And so I remember I know I want to say this to my kids, so I'd stop and think how do I phrase this so that it sounds right? So it was definitely a process, how to work on.
Could you do it though? When you stopped and thought about it, could you figure out what you were supposed to be saying?
I think so. Yeah, I was just trying to say, trying to make them feel thank you for helping me instead of oh, you're the best. So I just kept going back to the examples in the book, but it's different situations and different things. So that was a good practice, but yeah, I'd have to stop and think okay, how do I say this?
And in the beginning, that's what it is. You have to stop and consciously think about it.
Yeah.
And it's a pain.
Yeah.
But like I said, it took me 6 years, and now it's habit. But it does. It takes a lot of thinking because you were raised different.
On them too. You see how they react.
Did you already notice that?
Mm-hmm.
See, that's awesome. Yeah, that's very good. Yes.
I just was going to say, I did a lot of, hold on, let me say that differently. I'm sorry. Hold on, let me think about how to say that better. And my kids were looking at me just say it, just shut up, or move on. But, I did a lot of that throughout the week. Hold on, I'm going to say this a little bit differently. What I really appreciate is that, not just good job.
Okay, so then when you said it differently, could they take that in, or had they already shut you off because you said it wrong?
Okay. They smiled and were like, oh, thank you.
Good.
Yeah, no, it was good.
Because I really think even when you stop and say it right, it's oh, they haven't taken in the first one. But when then you stop and say it right, it's oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good job.
Well, while we're talking about rephrasing, one of the things that I really struggle with is giving out orders, even with a smile on my face and so much love, okay, go brush your teeth, go get this, you need to do this. So my rephrasing this week was really working on okay, hey, we need to get this done, this is on the list, and kind of giving them their dignity back, which is, an indirect form of encouragement. It might not necessarily be on the actual actions. That's something I've been working on for years with this class, but just the orders versus the giving them the agency to choose to do. And I found that that indirect form of encouragement was totally a bolster for the direct forms.
Yes.
And that is so hard. I don't know why that's harder for me than, probably because I haven't been working on it as long, but that's way hard, because I'm just like so analytical, like this is this. I like know how to play Tetris with you guys, and this is what I want you to do to get everything done, and I'm not teaching them how to do Tetris for their own day, you know.
What color are you?
What color? Oh, I'm red. I used to be yellow and then blue, and I feel like I'm like kind of a red yellow, if that exists. But that's the duality, so
Yeah.
I'm the crazy mom. But
I think that's a great combination. A great combination.
confusing for everyone around you. So.
Yes, yes. I have a son that's that, and he's delightful. He gets a lot done in life, and yet he's so fun to be around. So it's a good combination. Might be hard as a parent, but it's a good combination.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'm a praiser. I like to give my kids those compliments, and I didn't realize until I took this class that isn't the way, to encourage your kids. And so this week again, I just kind of really focused on my verbiage and how I say things. But one thing that I noticed, and I don't really know why or the effect, but and I tried to slow down to actually listen and to my kids, but I did notice, like my daughter, she's very naturally driven with her academics, and things come easily to her. And she was talking to me about, and I usually go, Ava, you're a smart girl. Things come easy to you. They don't come as easy to your brother or and I don't say that in front of him. And I said, but it's a blessing. You need to. And I can tell she's not satisfied with that. She doesn't like, because she's like, Mom, I work hard. I work hard. And I go, and I'm like, yeah, you do work hard, but you're really natural. But and I kind of this week I did notice, like Ava, when she was working on something, I'm like, I just love how hard you work on your art. It's so beautiful or something. And I could just see her just like, it just made her feel so validated and so good inside. And I did recognize a closeness with her a lot more. I think she needed that from me because, she was more affectionate. She's like, can I put my feet on your lap when we were watching a show? And she was snuggly, and she hasn't done that in a while. So I did notice that. And I did also notice my kids not bickering as much, too.
It takes them out of competition if you can.
Yeah.
Remember how to do this.
And I think just trying to stay positive and focus on their strengths and their spiritual strengths and being kinder instead of just always feeling like I have to correct them or teach them with a comment. I think it made for a nicer home environment. And I think they didn't, I don't know, it did affect the whole environment of the home.
Can I just add one little, parenthesis on the side?
Yeah.
You made the comment that you said, I can see how hard you're working on your art project. It is so beautiful.
Yeah.
The first part is perfectly said.
Yeah.
The second part, find something in
Specific.
the art project. I love the way you drew that tree.
Yeah.
I love that. I just love that tree. Or whatever. That it keeps it, then they take from the inside out, this is beautiful.
Right.
So it's hard. This
It is
thing
hard.
is hard.
Yeah.
It's
It is
hard
hard.
for me because you just want to say all these positives.
Uh-huh.
You just want to tell them how marvelous they are and how great they are and how perfect is it. You just can't. It doesn't get in them. It doesn't get in them. So this is a hard one. I think to grasp. Holly.
So I wasn't here last week, but something that kind of like with the praising thing, I remember, so I'm a photographer, and I read this article once that they said that it's very similar. It's a way to properly compliment another photographer in a way that it actually will internalize with them is to tell them a specific about their work. Don't just say, wow, you do really beautiful work. You tell them what specifically, whether it's your composition, the way you work with lighting, the way you work with, specifics. And I don't think I'd really made that connection with parenting as much, but how important that is, because people can say, if someone tells me, oh, wow, you do really good work, I think it's beautiful, I'm like, oh, thank you, that's, nice. Whereas if someone, I had a videographer who recently told me the way you shoot is actually similar to a videographer in the way that, you shoot through things. And I just, glowed. I'm like, oh, my gosh, he actually appreciated, and I don't know what the difference is, but I can see how that can go with parenting too, is the more specific you can get. I don't know, I'm sure you talked about it last week, but I just feel like it just clicks in brains in totally a different way. So.
It does. You can internalize it, and then they start feeling like they're good. And otherwise it's like, oh, you know, and they always are in competition when they can't take it in. So that's good. I'm so glad that you tried it and you see some of the results. I mean, it's an ongoing, it's a journey. It is not a lesson and an event. It is a journey to become different in the way you speak. But you're getting the vision. You're seeing it. You're beginning to see it. And that's what these lessons are for, is just help you begin to see it. Now, you realize that after I give you this lesson for this week, you'll probably forget last week's lesson on that one, and you work on this one. And that's why you cannot change everything in a 10-week period. You can't. I'm giving you too much stuff. So I'm hoping, and maybe this one is a really good one to try to hang on to and be one of the ones that you say, okay, because of this semester, these are the two things that I'm really working on changing. And maybe this is one, because it does. It makes a powerful difference on the spirit in your home. But you can see, and it's several comments, how praise and encouragement dovetails into competition. So you take them out of competition and learn to encourage them. Contention level in your home really, really goes down. Now, and as we're talking about this, if you learn very carefully how to take them out of competition, so that 2 weeks ago lesson, and you learn how to encourage them by how you use your verbiage in your 10 to 1, when we get to discipline, you won't even have that much of a need for discipline. Because so many of the problems are resolved when they're not in competition, then they're not fighting. And when they're encouraged, rather than praised, they're motivated to do what you want them to do. So the need for discipline, all of these things are to make discipline unneeded, if that makes sense. If you build this foundation, don't get me wrong, you will always have to discipline, because as they reach different age levels, they push against the boundaries. That's just part of growing up. And there's nothing wrong with that. But by and large, you will find that they have much more submissive spirits and are more willing to cooperate and are more willing to listen to you when you teach them, if you can learn to incorporate these things. Anyone else have something they would like to share before we go on to today's? Yes, please.
I prayed about my spiritual gifts.
Oh, thank you.
And I was told that something is my spiritual gift that I've always thought of as a weakness of mine. I'm a very, very sensitive person, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard people tell me to stop saying I'm sorry or whatever. But this last week, one of our really good friends was diagnosed a few weeks ago with leukemia. And this last week, someone told me specifically how much it means to them, how sensitive I am, because they can tell that I'm mourning with them. And they can feel that. And after I felt that from them, it changed me. After I felt the Spirit confirm that to me, that it's okay that I'm sensitive. And it helped me to realize and see spiritual gifts in others that I have thought as negative things. And like in my child who is stubborn, she's stubborn for a reason, and I need to figure out how I can uplift what I might see as a negative. Heavenly Father's given that to me for a reason. So.
What a beautiful insight. Thank you for sharing. And I agree 100%. I think sometimes your greatest spiritual gift, Satan wants to keep you from using. And so if he can convince you it's your weakness, he can keep you from magnifying it. That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else have something that they would like to share before we get down to the nitty-gritties? Anything? Okay, then we will go where we are. We'll continue with what we're doing. Just as those last couple of weeks, praise and encouragement and competition, those kind of dovetail together, the next 3 weeks are going to dovetail together. And so we'll build upon, and what I hope to be able to do is we'll do today's, and then hopefully next week show you how it hooks on, and then show you how the next one hooks on. So it's kind of a 3-week train, if you will. And so don't you worry about it yet, because I'll try to make those connections for you. But if there's anything that I hope that you see in all of the lessons, is none of them stand alone. None of them are a concept in and of themselves. They're all principles that unite together to help us develop good parenting, good Christ-like parenting. And so it isn't that you just do one and then you don't have to do any of the rest. They all play together to help us have Christ-centered homes. And so the one that we're going to talk about today is one that's a little bit frustrating, I think, to parents. And it becomes more frustrating because of the time that we live in, the day and the age. If you talked about this topic, which is work, teaching our children to work, if you talked about this topic in my grandparents' era, it wouldn't even be a topic of conversation. People would say, what are you? Of course we work. Everybody works. Everybody in the family works. Because they were coming out of depression and they were all working together as a family for survival, but just to help the family meet their ends. And so it wasn't even a question. Now we live in this society where we're an affluent society. And so even though you don't feel rich, you certainly provide for the needs for your family, and you have homes, and a lot of you live in subdivisions. And so then when I say, and we're going to talk about how to get children to work, they are being raised, particularly in the last generation, of entitlement. And what happened is, from my grandparents to me, we worked really hard. And so then you have that next generation of parents who are saying, I don't want my children to have to do this. I don't want them to have to work so hard. I want to give them the things that they want. I want them to be happy. And so good parenting then, consciously or unconsciously, became defined as if you can give your children what they want, and if your children are happy, you're a good parent. And you'll say, oh no, that's not right. It doesn't sound right. Well, it's not how it sounds. Just think about when you feel like you're not a good parent. And it's usually because they're not happy, they're boobing and bawling and crabbing about what they have to do, or you haven't been able to give them something that they really want, and you just want to make them happy. And so when parenting is based upon those two criteria, are they happy and do they get what they want, then we raise a very entitled, self-indulgent child. And so part of when we teach about work is to change your paradigm as to what it's all about. What is it all about? And what are you willing, I hate to use the word endure, but how much flack are you willing to take to be able to teach the correct principle? You've heard me say it before, and today's the day when I'd say it, is that we have to teach children to work past comfort. So if they're doing a job and they're crying and telling you how unfair it is and how hard it is, actually, rather than giving in and capitulating to what they're saying, this is the time he said, yes, I got a good job going here. Because they have to learn to push past discomfort. We've the society teaches that as soon as things get hard, you quit. So if it's too hard, you stop doing it. And that has been reinforced in our social structure. So, you know, everybody gets the trophy, and everybody gets to take their tests over and over and over for as many times as they'd like. And everybody gets to, you know, we have reached this point that no one is striving for excellence because mediocrity is rewarded. And so we have to, but it's something that society's not going to reward them for, doing hard things. It's something that we have to help them learn from the inside out, that doing hard things is a good thing. And it makes you feel good about yourself. And it gives you a sense of accomplishment and purpose. And you're not doing it for outside strokes. So you're not doing hard things for the praise of the world. You're doing hard things because it makes you feel good to accomplish them. And you have confidence in yourself that you have the ability to accomplish them. Now that only comes as parents teach through all of the steps of work so that they can reach that point of desiring to work and feeling that confidence, self-confidence that they can actually do and accomplish hard things. And most of that has to do with how we parent them and how we teach them in this part of our parenting. So first of all, I think that we need to understand that everything worthwhile requires hard work. And hard work is not just a physical thing that we do, it is a spiritual attribute. And it never ends. You never reach a point where you don't have to work. And you've heard people say, oh, I just am going to work really hard so that by the time I'm 35 I can retire and then I can play. You know, and I just don't have to work anymore. Work is an eternal principle. And the Lord is still working. His work and glory is to bring to pass our salvation. So in the eternal life of man. So it's still work. Adam and Eve, when they were in the Garden of Eden, they worked in the Garden of Eden. They were commanded to dress and keep the garden, which required effort, required work. Even though they didn't have to pull weeds, I promise you, there was work to care for animals and to care for that beautiful garden. And when they were cast out, they were told that by the sweat of their brow, they would eat their bread, and that they would work to make their life happen. So work is an eternal principle. And then go into the scriptures and think, and this is just on the bottom of page 66, and I was thinking about this as a spiritual thing. Think about the words in the scriptures that describe prayer. And pray diligently. Pray always. Pray without ceasing. Enos fought mightily with the Spirit. Ponder. Ponder is a hard form of mental spiritual activity. So most of our prayers end up being this 2-minute pause on the way to bed or 2-minute pause on the way to breakfast. So Heavenly Father wants us to learn how to work in prayer, to work in our fasting. Are we fasting for a purpose? Are we praying during the fast? Acquiring spiritual attributes requires effort. And when we cease to work on spiritual attributes because it gets hard, we cease to grow. So it is in that continued effort, in the continued overcoming hard things, that the growth occurs. So what we need to do when our children are young, and the wonderful thing is this is the one area that children come enthused about. Children come when they're 2 and 18 months and 2, and they want to work. They want to, and it absolutely drives you nuts because they're a little bit irritating. They want to fold the clothes, and they want to do all the cooking, and they want to mop the floors, and they want to clean them. And it's like this, ooh, you know, could you just go away for a minute so I could get the work done, so I get the jobs done? And yet this is the beginning of the time that we should capture that spirit and help them to develop what I want to call a mind to work. When they're young, when they are very young, and I'm talking 2, 3, 4, this is the time that you develop the mind to work. Now, the mind to work, what does it mean? It's on page 67. This is your attitude about working. This is where you develop the feeling that work is fun. That hard work is fun. Because when you're done, you can stand back and you can look at it and you think, whoa, that is awesome, that is great. Work should be done often. We tend to let them play and occasionally pull them in to do a few jobs and say that that's work. That's really not work. We're going to talk about how we do these levels of learning how to work. And a little job list is not, it's a good beginning, but we tend to stop there. And that's where we need to improve, is because then we're saying, well, they got their jobs done, but that we're not really teaching them how to work hard past discomfort, which is what we have to do. So if you look at these, number 8 is the one that I really like. 7 and 8 is 7, willing to stay with a job until it's finished, regardless of how hard it is. So a job doesn't end when I'm tired of it, or when I'm hot, or when I'm thirsty. A job ends when it's done. And we teach that principle. Or, and this will almost seem incomprehensible to some of you, to actually teach children to seek opportunities to work. And that also has to be taught. That you will have children, I mean, you need to teach your children to that. And you actually teach them that by not giving them too much. That they have to earn the things that they want. And then they seek opportunities to have pay jobs. They will seek to want. But if we make it so easy for them to get, or we give them too much, then they don't seek opportunities to earn it. And what we need to do is provide those opportunities where they can earn what they want rather than give them what they want. And they should be providing from themselves some of their needs as well as their wants. And that comes into money management, which we'll talk about here in a minute. So the world, from their advertising and from the things that they see at school, they feel they need stuff. I need a phone. I need an iPad. I need a computer. I need new Nike shoes. No, I can't just have shoes. I need new Nike shoes. I need. And all of this comes from, if you will, good marketing. I mean, you know, advertising and marketing, and they talk to each other, and they see the advertisements in the world, and wants become needs for them. And so often, then we as parents validate that. And one of the very first things that we need to help them distinguish, because the world is not teaching them, is the difference between a want and a need. And as they learn to have these differences, and then helping them learn how to work to fulfill their needs, and that they still can have some of their wants. So children never are going to develop this mind to work on their own. They kind of come bringing the budding seeds of it. But if we don't help teach that and develop it, then it will die. So let's start with little people. In the beginning, how do you start teaching work? How do you begin that process of teaching how to get children to work? when they're young, they have the desire. And usually when they have that desire, you have 3 or 4 little people. You have one that's probably capable of doing some things, and then you have another one, and then you have a baby. And so it becomes a little bit distracting and maybe not easy for you to teach them, to be involved in teaching them how to work. But it's critically important that you do. So in the beginning, when you give a child a task, and children at the age of 2 should be working off assigned responsibilities. And they should know what their responsibilities are. Their capability of doing some of these responsibilities is not very great. So you have to remember how old they are. And this becomes even more important when, say, you have 4 children that are 2 years apart. So you have a 2-year-old, a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old. Is that 4 or 5? Whatever that is. Then you've taught your oldest one well. You taught your second one sort of. The third one's sort of learned by watching the first one. And the bottom one hasn't been taught. But you feel like you've been teaching it all the time. So, and then you expect the 4-year-old to produce on the level of an 8-year-old. Just because sometimes that job's done well, but you forget who did it. And so sometimes you need to look at your children and remember how old they are. And say, oh, let's see, you're 2 and you kind of did it on a 2-year-old level. Or you're 4 and this is a 4-year-old level. So be realistic in what your expectations are. So look at their age. But number 2, you also have to say, did I teach this child? Because all children have the right to be individually taught. Now, I say that, but I can also say that if you have children over the span of 10 years or whatever, you can have an older child be assigned to help teach some of the steps in the process of learning to a younger child. You're not absolutely required to teach them every step of every job of, every inch of the way. But you are ultimately responsible for seeing that they learn. So if you have an older one and a younger one, we used to have, my kids called it cooperative and buds. And so on Saturday, I'd sign them up in teams. They would have teams. So then you have an older one working with a younger one. And they're teaching and training as they work together. So that process can happen also. So that you're not overwhelmed if you're like, my word, I have 6 kids, so I have to do this by myself all the time. No. Part of teaching your older children responsibility is to get them to help in teaching and training younger children. But you have to be sure that each child is individually taught, whether it's by you or by a sibling. And mentally, you've got to be able to check off in your head whether or not they've learned something. So if you're holding them accountable for a job done to a certain degree, you have to be sure that they have learned that appropriately. Okay?
I had a really awesome experience with this with my 10-year-old son. My mom was visiting, and she doesn't get involved with parenting very often. She just kind of sits back, and I was really frustrated with my 10-year-old and like, why can't you clean your room? Why can't you do this a particular way? And he was in tears and went into his room and shut the door. And my mom kind of stood there and just kind of observed and kind of watched and said, I don't think he knows how to clean his room the way that you're expecting him to. And like total light bulb. And I said, you don't think so? She goes, no, he doesn't. She said, he honestly does not know. She said, he tries to do everything right, but she's like, he does not know how to do it. And that was such a huge thing. And my mom's like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said it. I said, I am so glad you did.
Yes.
Because I went back in that day and I sat down and I taught him, okay, you're overwhelmed, your room's a mess. Take one surface at a time. Look at what's on your dresser, put that away. Like, go to your bed. Anything that's on your bed, make up your bed. Take care of what's on your bed. And by doing that, by teaching him, now he understands my expectation, and there's less of a fight. So for us, that was such a huge, like, noble moment.
Thank you for sharing, because we, particularly if we've had older children, which we've taken all the time to teach, we assume that these younger ones coming up, when you say go clean your room, that they know what that means. So we're going to talk about kind of how you teach and train this. Did you have a comment?
Well, I just was going to share a simple principle of that I just discovered like a week ago with my 13-year-old son. And for months, I've been getting after him because I've been noticing he bites his fingernails, and it drives me crazy, and it's not healthy. And anyhow, so finally one day I just like, why do you not cut your fingernails? Why do you bite them? And he says, Mom, you never taught me. So I realized after all my kids, I never taught my son how to cut his nails, and he just bites them off. So just the littlest things that you totally overlook sometimes and not even teaching.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. So let's kind of, if you go to page 71, ages, this is according to Eric Erickson and Rudolf Dreikers, and it's very old that they came out with this, in the 50s somewhere. But it's true, and I believe true principles are true principles. So in the very young age, 2 to 4, they call it the age of industry, meaning from 2 to 4. Now, remember, that's generic. It could be 2.5, it could be 4.5. We're just talking about. But if you have children in this age, that's exciting because you can go home and look at this and see what you think. But in this age, 2 to 4, children want to help. They want to be involved. They are good helpers. They tend to do gopher kind of jobs. So 2-year-olds, particularly as they start at 2, by the time they're 4, they should be working out of gopher jobs. But what I mean for a gopher job is, could you go get mommy a diaper? Could you go take this to the trash? Could you go, if you tell a 2-year-old you want a family room cleaned up, they can't succeed. That's too much. That's overwhelming. But if you say, I need you to just pick up the Legos, they can do that. You break things down. That's gopher jobs, where you're taking big jobs apart and breaking them down. And by the time they're 4, they should be able to do those. Should be able to say, clean the family room, and they know what that means. I'm going to show you how you teach them that in a minute. But do you see what I'm saying? In this span, 2 to 4, we're still talking about gradient levels of their ability to do jobs. So at this stage, 2 to 4, they will work for encouragement. You notice I didn't say praise? So they will work for encouragement, meaning when they get the jobs done, you can say, wow, all the Legos are gone. That's so awesome. And they work to get your approval. That is sufficient for them. They are fed on your approval, which makes it very easy to work with them and to motivate them. The hard part of working with children at this age is that their capacity to perform is not really good. And so, but it takes a lot of your time because you have to be involved with them as they do this. But the more you're willing to pay now, the greater will be the joy as they get older. Because this is where they learn the mind to work. They learn that working is fun. They learn to work to a job is well done because they won't get angry when you call them back if you do it in a non-critical way to teach them how a complete job looks. This is the time where you need to be careful not to give them too many electronics. Don't put them in front of a TV. Don't put them in front of a screen. Let them work with you because they are developing that mind and that desire to work at this age. And they will work. All you have to do is be pleased with them. And they want to keep working, and they want to keep working. And that's where sometimes you get irritated because they have a mind to work at this age, and they want to work. Now, however, within this age is where you start to teach them how to do hard things. This is the beginning. Let me share with you an experience that we had in our family. Corey, my son, he has a son, and I think this is when Jakey was about 3 years old. And Corey was clearing a flower bed in the back of their house. And so he was taking out all the sod, cutting away the sod, and they were going to make it into a flower bed. And so Corey was out there, and it would be so easy for Corey to have the wheelbarrow right next to where he was doing the job, cut the sod, dig it up, and dump it in the wheelbarrow. This is where you have to get creative, and you have to parent with the desire to teach your children to work. You are not parenting to get jobs efficiently done. You're parenting to train and teach children. So he put the wheelbarrow down at the end of where this planter area was going to be, and he started at this end, and he dug up a little piece of sod, and Jake's job was to take the sod and carry it to the wheelbarrow. And they got about half done, and Jake was pooped. He's 3. He's 3 years old. He's 3. And he wanted to quit, and he was crying, and he wanted to go inside. And Corey was just saying, man, you're building such strong muscles. Look at those muscles you're building, and look at all that you've got in there. Look at how full the wheelbarrow is. And just encouraging him, encouraging. It would have been so easy to say, you're 3 years old, you put a little thing and you're crying. Yes, you can go in and move the wheelbarrow over closer and just start shoveling it in. That would have been the easy thing to do. But it doesn't teach the child that we work till the job is done. And that's what Corey said. We'll be done. Jake would say, how much longer? How much longer? And Corey said, until it's done. When this area is done, then we're done. And then we get to, I can't remember what they were going to do once that was finished, but there was something fun that they were going to do. But do you see how we break off training because we feel sorry and they're complaining and we can do it easier? But we do them a disservice because if you'll notice, the ages of 5 to 11, you notice that, is the age of industry versus inferiority. I just want to tell you, if you haven't taught them the mind to work, by the time they're 11, it becomes a lot more difficult. So, don't get me wrong, doesn't mean you can't. But to teach them that love of work just for the value of work and for the satisfaction that comes from doing hard things becomes more difficult after 11. You fight a harder battle. So if you can take those first years and work with them and teach them to do hard things past comfort, then they're beginning to develop that mind to work, and as they get older, they can actually do more complicated things that give them more self-esteem and help them feel greater self-confidence because you have been teaching them all along. Now, if you look at that, it says ages 2 to 4 is the age of industry, and that's where they really enjoy working, but you have to teach them to do hard work, simple jobs, but hard work, meaning we do jobs past the time you want to go play. And teach them that we finish things. That's the best age to teach them, 2 to 4. 5 to 11, it says industry versus inferiority. This is where they start feeling like they're a failure or their self-esteem is at stake if they can't do, if they fail, and so they're very careful about not wanting to get involved in things they think they're going to be a failure at. They want to look good. They're seeking outside praise. And so this is where we have to be careful to teach them. This is where we stop doing gopher jobs and we give them full jobs. So we're teaching them that you're more responsible. And so now I want you to just go clean the family room rather than my walking with you and helping you do it all. And then we help them understand how much we appreciate that effort and how it makes the family run smoother. Their contribution to the movement and the growth and the smooth functioning of the family, so that they don't feel like, did your kids ever say to you, mine did, Mom, the only reason you had kids was just because you wanted a bunch of servants. I thought, oh brother, let me tell you, it's easier to do it yourself than to follow through with all these kids. Because on Saturday morning, when they would be doing their jobs, with so many kids that I had, my job was simply to go be sure that they were all doing their jobs. And by the time I got to the last one, I had to go back and check on the first one. And I say, Mom, what did you do today? I parented all day. That they don't get that. It's like, what's on your list that you checked off? And so your children will say that. But some of you buy guilt over that. Don't. You're doing your job. Your job is to teach and train. So you're doing your job. Don't let them put you in a position where you buy guilt. So this is what you need to, we want to teach these 5 to 11-year-olds how to do larger and be responsible for larger projects, but you still will have to be very involved with them to teach them how to be successful in doing this. We have teenagers then, when they get to young men and young women, we put them in charge of a fireside, or we put them in charge of something, an activity, and they fall through. And as leaders, we get really frustrated because we want them to learn how to do it. They should have learned that between 5 and 11 at home, if we're parenting right. They should learn the steps of putting together leadership. This is where they begin that process. This is where you put them in charge of a family home evening. And then you teach them. So if you're in charge of home evening, what do you need to be sure happens? Well, somebody needs to teach the lesson, and somebody needs to be doing prayer and song, and somebody needs to be doing the activity, and somebody needs to be doing treats. I don't know how you have yours, and it doesn't matter, but you help them to see steps. This is that beginning. And you help them be successful, because that's where they feel the inferiority, or they feel self-esteem, is how well they succeed in doing these jobs. They get full jobs now, not part jobs. Now, with that being said, in this period, all the way through it, you need to teach them what, for example, I'm going to tell you to clean the bathroom. And it's just like she was saying about her little boy cleaning the bedroom. You have to teach them what you feel like the completed job should look like. So I used to have in my house cards, 8 by 10 cards, that I would put on the wall. And one of them said what I expected on a school day afternoon, a quick clean. So I expect you to be sure there's toilet paper, and I expect you to wipe off the top of the cupboards, and I expect you to take out all the dirty clothes, and whatever else you want them to do. So then on another poster, and these are kind of like on the back of the door, they're just, or on the inside of a cupboard door, they're not part of your interior decorating. They're just sort of in there as reference. And so then on the other card, it says what I would expect for a deep clean, a Saturday clean. Now I expect you to clean the bathtub well and put in all fresh linens, washcloths and towels, and I expect you to be sure the toilet paper, and you clean the toilet. And I am going to be with you one day and show you how to clean a toilet. I'm going to stand with you, and I'm going to teach you, and I'm going to train you. And this doesn't become your full job until I know that I have trained you on all the parts. I'm going to teach you, what does it mean to clean a bathtub? It's more than just taking out the toys and putting a clean washcloth. I don't want that scummy gunk on the bottom of the bathtub or the shower. I want it cleaned out. I want it scrubbed out. So it doesn't mean I just take a dirty towel and kind of wipe up the water. It means I am going to take some cleaner and I'm going to scrub it out. And I am going to show you, teach you how to do that. I'm going to teach you how to clean a mirror so that there's not streaks in it. so that it actually shines. I'm going to teach you how to clean a sink. So you must be responsible for teaching each of these elements. I'm also going to teach you how to mop a floor. So in the 2 to 4 age, and maybe up into 5 and 6, depending on how you get her done, you're going to teach all of the elements. And then after you've taught the elements, then this can become your complete job. And then when it's your complete job, I will check it for my kids. Whenever they're through with their jobs on Saturday, I came back and checked all of them. But now when I come in and check it, the first thing I say is not what's wrong. The first thing I say is what's right. And then there may be a few things that are wrong, like they didn't sweep the floor and there's still tissue behind the toilet and it obviously wasn't mopped. So then, rather than saying, did you check there? That doesn't look very good. You say, let's check the list. Okay, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Now, you're not the bad guy. They're accountable to a list. And so then when there's a few things that aren't done, that's on the list. And you say, well, okay, why don't you finish that up and I'll be back. And you are not the bad guy. So it works really well. And you can do that with a bathroom or a living room or a bedroom, the dishes, the kitchen. You can do it. Now, with that being said, you're probably not going to do it with every single job you have in the house. But you need to be sure that they know what the expectation is. If they are assigned laundry, what does that mean?
So I have a friend that has 10 kids, and she noticed that her kids were getting lax on the job. So she did a Saturday boot camp with them and went through each of the jobs with a Saturday boot camp. But you can imagine how well the kids really liked that. But she said it was amazing how much better the kids did on their jobs after the Saturday boot camp.
Perfect. Perfect. And so that's the next step. One is to be sure that they know what a job looks like, what you expect, and you've taught them individually. We get mad at our children because they're supposed to do dishes, and then you come back out and half the counters aren't wiped off and there's still goober in the sink. And, you know, that's your responsibility to train and teach. Okay, then the next step is do not lower your expectations. Keep your expectations high. Children will go to whatever level of expectation is there. They're like water. They will always run to the lowest point. So if they can get away with not wiping off the cupboards, they will never wipe off the cupboards. If they can get away with folding laundry but not putting it away, they will never put it away. So, and what happens is this very thing. In the beginning, they start to do it right, but then something comes up, and so you allow that one to slip, and then they know. So does that mean you can never allow something to slip? No, occasionally they're really tired, or they have tests, or they've got all kinds of things to do, but you cannot make that a habit. And what happens is that they get older. Now we're talking after 11, and we're into high school, and they're so busy doing so many things that we say, okay, you don't have to do anything here at home anymore. That should not be right. They should still be responsible for carrying their load and sharing what's going on at home. Now let me tell you something just quickly about children working when they're in high school. They do get busy. They get very, very busy. But a lot of their busyness is in sports. So now they're playing sports. I like sports. I think they teach children to do hard things, but I don't like them year-round. Because though a sport teaches them some self-discipline, if you're in football, I've had kids play football. That is hard work. It is hard work for them. And they come home exhausted and tired. So during that time, would I lighten up on weekday responsibilities? Probably a little, but they can still get their bedroom done in the morning before they go to school, and they can still make a bed. But I might lighten up a little bit, and they can still work hard on weekends and doing hard things. But when they're in a sport, they are totally self-focused. Even though it's a hard thing, they're thinking about my team, my sports. You need to be sure I get to my practice, and you need to come to my games. And it's all a self-focused thing. And the world revolves around them. So if they go from football to basketball to, I don't know what comes next, whatever comes next to whatever comes next. Soccer goes all year round. You can do that one, always. But do you see, even though they're doing something that's innately hard, challenging, it's all for self. And that's not what we want to teach them. We want to teach them to have good experiences and to do hard things, but not be self-focused. So when we do service and gratitude, you'll understand better how we get them to learn to live out. But in your thinking, when you're thinking, well, all of these sports are teaching them to do hard things, yes, but you have to be careful that that's not the only teaching that they're getting, because it is a self-focused experience. I think music is a wonderful thing. Most children in the beginning do not enjoy music lessons. It's a rare exception that loves to sit down and play the piano for practice for 20 minutes. Did you hear the story about the little boy? He was practicing the piano. He was sitting at the piano. It was in the summertime, and the front door was open, and he was sitting practicing at his piano with his baseball mitt sitting next to him on the piano bench. And a salesman came to the door, and the door was open, so he just kind of knocked gently, and the little boy turned around and said yes. And he said, "Is your mother home?" And the little boy said, "What do you think?" You know, he looked at his mitt sitting there like, "Do you think I'd be here if she wasn't?" So it's, you know, I think that music becomes a good thing, which teaches them to do hard things, past what they want to do. And but those are things that you have to determine in your own family. So be careful that you do not lower expectations. Let me tell you another experience that we had with our boys. We had just moved into a house up on Highland Valley Road. And we had about 4 acres, and when we first moved there, we ordered, 15, 20 trees from the Oregon coast that were big trees. We didn't plant little trees. My husband wanted to plant big trees. And so they had trunks that were already pretty good size. But we didn't have any sprinkler system, or we didn't have any water that would water these big trees. And so they put them in the ground, and then they dug big wells around the tree that you would fill the well with water. But we also had gophers out there. So when you watered the tree, you had the hose in one hand to put the water in, but you had a shovel in the other hand because you had to fill up any gopher hole where all of a sudden the water would start going down a gopher hole. So part of the job of watering the trees was you had to fill up the gopher holes and water the trees. And it took probably about 20 minutes per tree, and we probably had 10 trees. So you're talking about a little bit of time that was involved. So one day, Corey, and he was 10 at that time, as he tells the story, he said he was 10, it was his job to do the trees. And he was supposed to do them after school. And so he said, sure, he'd do that. His dad told him to do it. So after school, he came in and did everything but the trees. He's my beautiful yellow boy, and he just flitted around and had a great time. Suddenly, it's getting late, and he's realizing that his dad's probably going to be coming home from work. And I think Mike got home late. He was in construction, and sometimes his evenings were late when he'd get home. And so it was probably about 7:30, and Corey all of a sudden decides, I'm tired, I have to go to bed. And he ran downstairs, and he got into bed. And Mike came home about 15 minutes later and asked me where Corey was, and I said he was downstairs in bed. So Mike went downstairs, opened the door, and Corey, of course, is not asleep, but is oh, hi, you know, pretending he'd been asleep for hours. And Mike says, Corey, did you water the trees? And he said, oh, I forgot. I'm sorry, I forgot. And Mike said, okay, well, you just need to get up and get your clothes on and go out and water them. That's what we mean by holding them accountable. This was 8 o'clock at night. Corey was out there for probably 2.5 hours in the dark with a flashlight, with his shovel, with the hose, watering the trees. Was he unhappy about it? Yes, yeah. But that's how you hold the expectation high, is you don't say, well, then tomorrow you can do it. You come do it. And then tomorrow, they won't forget about doing it when you ask them to do it. So you hold your expectation high, and you help them realize that they're accountable. And you keep them accountable. Part of teaching them how to work hard and in doing these hard things is to help them feel like they're part of, we do hard things because you're contributing to the welfare of the whole family. So we're all going to do hard things. We are all going to do them together. We're all going to work together to make our home run, make it happy, make it pleasant. The problem you have living in subdivisions is sometimes you have a hard time figuring out what to do. After the basic, you know, the living room's vacuumed and dusted and the dishes are done and laundry's done, what am I supposed to make these kids do? And so sometimes it becomes interesting. However, because it is an eternal principle, if you will pray, Heavenly Father will give you ideas. But you have to remember that ideas frequently involve you. You know, so if it's, I want to have this idea where you'll take the kid and put them to work. That may happen, but it may not. And you may have to create the job. So I'm going to ask Andrea to tell you about the work she and her children created for them to get what they wanted, rather than her just handing out money.
So one of the things that I did, because I don't believe in just handing out money and I expect them to work for what they want, I told them that I think one of the times they were trying to earn money to go on a trip somewhere and I wasn't going to just provide it. So I told them that I would help them make bread and they could sell bread and I would provide all the ingredients for it, but I would not do it for them. And there were things that were required. They had to make sure that they cleaned up afterwards. They had to, you know, I did everything in my power to help them. We posted it on Facebook. We made phone calls. I kept lists of how many loaves they needed to make. You know, we did all of that kind of stuff. And then I drove them around to deliver the bread. So we did all of that, but they did all of the work for it. And so then anytime they decided that they needed money, that was what they asked if they could do, is if they could make bread to go sell bread. And as they got older, pretty soon it was, yes, you can. However, now to help pay for ingredients, you can only have 4 loaves out of that 5 that you're making. 1 is ours. That's your payment for doing it, is making it for our family. And if they chose to, if they cleaned up afterwards, then they had the opportunity to do it again. If they didn't clean up afterwards, so I did, then there were other consequences. They had to help do other things in place of that.
So do you see how you can reach a point where they're asking for work so that they can get some of the things that they want? There was one family who their children wanted to be in an activity, and so they decided, they sat down as a family and thought, what can we do? And they decided after Christmas, before Christmas they put out flyers, and then after Christmas they went around and collected people's Christmas trees and took them, hauled them away so that they would be taken care of. There was another family, and this family, some of you in here probably may know, but the father lost his job. It was a family of girls, and they all participated in high school activities, which nowadays cost money. And so Dad didn't have any money to give them at all, and so they decided, he lost his job, and then there was summer, and then the following year in school, they knew that they wanted to be in those activities. And so that summer, the girls got together and did a preschool day camp. And they had, they put out flyers, and they had parents that brought parents are always looking for something to have their kids do. And so they brought their kids over, and every day those girls celebrated a holiday. So one day was Halloween, and one day was Christmas, and one day was Easter. And they had activities, and they had those kids for about 4 hours. And they had activities, and they did treats, and they did all kinds of things. And they earned the money to pay for their events. So it takes some creativity. When my children were young, we planted a garden every year. I want you to know that I never harvested a thing, because they weren't good gardens. But it was a wonderful opportunity to have the kids weed, and to have them plant, and to have them go out and have to work in the yard. And though I never really canned off our gardens, we had one every year. The prophet said to plant it, and we planted it, and those kids took care of it. So you might have to get creative. They can clean a garage, they can paint a basement, they can, we get hung up by saying, oh, but they won't do a very good job. We'll teach them how. Teach them how to do a good job. My son was building a house, and he had his son that was about 12 at the time help him pour 34 yards of concrete. That's hard work, really hard work. But how do you think that 12-year-old felt after he said he had poured concrete? He felt fabulous. And that 12-year-old is now 15, living on the other side of the state, and he started his own lawn care business this past summer. And Dad said, okay, let me teach you how to drive the pickup truck. Because he has a driver's license, but it's different driving a pickup truck with a trailer attached that has all of the lawn mowing stuff in it. And so Dad went out and taught him how to drive a pickup truck with a trailer, and he went out and he got jobs, and he worked all summer, and he's just about got his mission paid for. So do you see, now do you think it was scary for a dad to give a 15-year-old a truck with a trailer? It's a little bit scary. But if you take the time to teach, and you teach them, you have faith in them. This boy now has a mind to work. He loves to work because of the self-fulfillment that doing hard things has brought him. Yes?
So I have a child that wanted to earn money. He's 10 and he turned 11 recently. And we said, okay, we'll let you mow the lawn, and you can earn $2 for the front yard, $2 for the backyard, and $2 for weed eating. We showed him how to do it and did it for a few months. And then after he had the money that he wanted, he decided he didn't want to do the job anymore. So what would you do in that situation where you kind of created or let him start to have that job, but yet once he has what he wants, the money for something, then he no longer wants to do it? Would you say, no, this is your job now? Or would you say, okay, fine, that's fine. I will give the job to someone else in the family who wants to do it? I'm having a hard time knowing what to do.
Okay, a lot of times, just look at real life. What principle are we teaching them in real life? If you go get a job and really decide you don't like who you're working with, do you just quit? Never mind, I'll go get a different job. A lot of people are doing that, but that's not being dependable. So if he had been my son, I think what I would have said is, you committed to do it for this summer. So you're on until this summer's over. Now, whether or not you decide to want to do it next summer, that's up to you. That's up to you. But this job is yours for the summer. Your contract with me is for the summer, for this whole period, until it freezes and we pull the hoses in because they're freezing at night and there's no more. This is your job, and that's your commitment. We hired you for this season, not for an amount of money. We hired you for this season, and so that is your commitment. So this is where you teach them to do hard things to the end. Do you see?
Yes.
Where you do it even though you don't want to, but you do it until the job is finished. And you're not finished until the end of the summer.
Okay, so the expectation should have been set when he started rather than mid, be like, okay, this is too much work for you and I'm tired of fighting it.
Yeah.
It's easier to do it myself. I have make sure that I'm clear on what the expectation is.
Mm-hmm.
If that's what he wants to
Right.
start doing, then the expectation is this.
Right.
Great, thank
Right.
you. That helps.
And if he is a strong-willed child, I would write a contract. And I would also withhold payment until the end of the summer. After you have worked for the summer, I will pay you. At the end of the summer, I will give you all of your money.
That's a great idea.
But a lot of those things you don't know until you've after you've had an experience with
He's my
individual
first,
personalities.
And he
Yeah.
is, yes.
Yeah,
Strong
but you
willed.
see how those become possible solutions. They're just possible solutions. Every child is different. Every child is. You'll have some children that really, 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 really want to work, and you have made a contract or you made an agreement. You will pay them whatever, but they don't ever want to spend. They just want to see their bank account get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and save all of their money, and they just become these little, greedy little people. I mean, they're working for it, which is true. But whenever you have a child, now we're kind of jumping boat here. We're going to go back here in a minute, but kind of jumping to money management. Whenever you pay them, then they should have a responsibility with that money. And the responsibility isn't that I get what I want. That's actually the least part of the money. So you teach them money management. And in money management, there's tithing. You should teach them from a very young age. If they're paying tithing, your little people are paying tithing. If they're paying tithing, they should be paying fast offerings. And fast offerings should increase proportionately with how much they make. So if you're making a lot, you should pay more fast offerings. And if you're making $2, you're going to pay less fast offerings. Kind of should increase with tithing. Tithing increases. And fast offerings is to take care of people who have nothing or have a great need. So if you have some money, you have more than those who have nothing. So the law is, the commandment is to pay tithes and offerings. And fast offerings is one of those things that unfortunately too many of our members don't even think about until they're married. And they move away, and then they think, oh, do I have to pay fast offerings? That should be something that they're taught all the way along. They should be taught to save. Savings are for college or for missions. They're untouchable savings. And that should be, at this little age, should be kind of a high percentage. And then there should be an amount that they can play with that is for their wants. I mean, how much, you look at your income, how much of your income do you get to have for wants? Not nearly enough. But we're teaching them life skills. And so they need to start learning how. So with that, if I had a child who was earning money over the summer, then you put away, you put away tithing, you put away fast offerings, you put away your savings, then you still have responsibilities. So you need to save for your school supplies. So when September rolls around, you will be responsible for, then that depends on how much they've earned and where you think they are. And they should need to be responsible for just a little bit more than what they make. It should be a little bit uncomfortable for them so that they will want to come and do more paid jobs to earn more money. And now you're teaching them to begin to seek, to want to work.
What if they want to buy something that you don't want them to buy? I feel like my little kids want to spend their money on just, after they've done all that, the savings and tithing and stuff, then they just want stuff that I feel like is a waste of money. And I try and talk to them about it, but eventually they have agency, and I'm just trying to let them have that agency
do one of two things. Increase the amount of savings so they have less spendable money. And say, you know, for your spendable money, part of this needs to be saved for birthdays or whenever, you know, we have savings that you don't touch, and then there should be a savings that is for birthdays or Christmas or those things that you're going to be responsible for. We've got to put a little stash here. And then of this money, you can have a little bit of it to buy the junky stuff. A little bit of it. You know, as you proportionally increase this, you decrease this. But they should, but rightfully so, you need to teach them about wasting money, about wasting it. And so we teach them even in spendable money, it should have some purpose. And sometimes the purpose is just to make us happy. Yeah. To buy an ice cream cone, to buy a chocolate bar, to buy a milkshake, just to make us happy. And sometimes it needs to be, you know, less frivolous. So, yeah, spendable money, hopefully, we can teach them to not waste it. So if money becomes harder and harder to get, then their desire to waste it becomes less, if that makes sense. With all of that being said, I am not opposed to allowances. You know, some people say, are allowances right or wrong? I don't think allowances are right or wrong. It depends on what you teach them to do with an allowance and how you teach them to use that money. Let me just say this. By the time your seniors leave home, they should know how to, by their senior year, they should be financially independent. In other words, they should be taking care of their needs. They should know how to use a debit card. They should have a bank account, and they should know how to use that debit card because they have to use it on their missions. So they need to be taught not only how to use the debit card, but then how to keep track of how to make a budget and how to keep track of a budget. And a budget is not a journal of spending. Some of us say, oh, I have a great budget. I've written down every single thing I've spent. That's a journal. A budget says, I have this much for this, and this much for this, and this much for this, and this much for this. And sometimes you fudge and put a little bit, you know, but it's a pre-planned, not a record of. Does that make sense? So they need to learn how to keep a budget.
So would you sit down with them when you're creating how much goes to spending for fun, how much goes to fast offerings, how much goes to savings? Would you let them be in on how much you're doing, or would you create that for them at first, and then as they get older, let them
I would create it for them at first, and as they get older, then you can discuss about it. But hopefully, if you create it when they're young, they start seeing the value of saving and mission and college and, you know, putting aside this. And you have to be very supportive in how you know, get them ledgers, get them check registers. Some of you don't even know what that looks like anymore because checks are sort of, passé. But you can go to the bank and get some. And you can help them record and see what they're doing and keep track of and help them make plans for. But you have to be willing to make them responsible for some of their needs. Let me tell you the story about, we still got so much to cover, but anyway, let me just share with you this story. There was a family that had really decided that they wanted to help their children learn to budget. And their kids weren't, some of them were better at it, some of them were worse at it. So they decided at the end of the summer, now I'm not necessarily saying I agree with all of their ideas, but it's a really good story. So, but at the end of the summer, they decided that they always had to buy stuff to get their kids into school. You know, buy their clothes, buy their stuff, get them into school. And so in this case, instead of making them earn the money, though, they said, okay, X amount of dollars we spend out of our budget every year to get you into school. So this year, we're going to do it different. This year, instead of us buying what you need for school, we are going to give each of you that amount of money. So it doesn't affect our budget any differently, but you will each have this amount of money. They sat down with each child and went over all the needs that they would have, clothes needs, and the girls were all, I want this, wanted to go to Macy's and buy the really nice, expensive stuff, or really, that's what they wanted. Now they had their money. They weren't quite Macy's shoppers anymore. And so they took them all to the mall one day, and these girls suddenly were looking for sales and good buys, and they let the kids go. And they said, okay, we'll meet you back here at a certain time. And so all of the kids disappeared, and at the end, they all came back. And the girls had really been wise. They bought things on sale, and they had used their money well, and they were well covered. Their son, however, had taken his money and bought a boombox. That was a while back, but that's what he bought. And they said, well, what about your clothes and whatever that you needed? And he said, oh, well, I have stuff. I'll just use it. And he said, okay. Now, the thing that made this wonderful is the parents said, okay, we gave you your money. So first day of school comes around, and he doesn't have anything new to wear. The girls come out looking beautiful and shiny and bright, and he's just got the remnants of last year's clothes. And he looks a little tacky, a little worn. And that's okay. Just Mom was happy. They were clean. And he says, but Mom, look at my shoes. And his tennis shoes, the whole sole was off. It was flapping in the breeze. And so he said, I just really need some new shoes. I need some new shoes, Mom. And she said, well, go out in the garage and talk to your dad about it. So he went out to the garage where his dad was doing some stuff, and he showed his dad. He says, Dad, I really need some new shoes. And, I got to get them before, I need some right now, and then I'll earn them. Then I'll earn the money for them, and then I'll do it. And Dad took some duct tape, wrapped it around the shoe, and he said, that ought to hold you till you earn your money. Now, do you see the value of the lesson came in allowing them to live out consequences with no lectures? With no lectures. That's the key. Once you start lecturing, you change the learning of the experience. So now they're mad at you for the lecture rather than learning the principle of. So money management is critically important to teach before they leave home. And your best time to teach them is when they're young. But even little people need to have responsibility. So even if at this age you're saying you need to earn money to buy a Christmas present for whoever you drew your name for, and we're going to go shopping at the dollar store, which is fine, they need to earn their dollar. They need to be involved in earning, not you handing out money. You should never be the money tree. Ever, ever, ever. So they need to learn from a young age that they can do these things. Okay, in all of this, one of the problems that parents sometimes have is failing to show appreciation. When a job is done well, it is done right, we go in and find what's wrong with it. And we need to go in and find what's right with it and show appreciation for that. Encouragement, saying positives, up front, validate them, and then allow them to critique themselves before you ever say a negative. You should say, is there anything else that you think needs to be done? Is there anything else? After you've said all the stuff that you thought was well done, then just ask them. And if they say no, then if you've got your list up, refer to your list. If you don't have your list up, you can say, you know what? I'll bet if you tried really hard, that bed could be made a little neater. What do you think? And say, no, I can't. That's the best I can do. Then say, then let me help you. Let's see if together we can't make it look a little bit better. Now you're teaching them, going back, reteaching what the good bed looks like. Does that make sense? Don't, you know, if you're starting to teach them when they're young, then you can do that easily. We have to be careful that we don't spend our time belittling what they've done. Okay, page 70. I want you for your homework to study those 8 tips. And we'll discuss what you think about them next week. I want you to turn to page 73. And as you do your work at home, as you have them do their job list and their work at home, remember that in the beginning, probably 2 to 11, in these early years where they're really doing work at home, it needs to be fun. It needs to be a fun time. And you can do that by, you know, playing songs. I highly recommend with little people. Oh, and even 10-year-olds, I mean, highly recommend that you do job lists. Job lists makes them accountable to a list. When they're accountable to us, and you say, well, go get your room clean, and then they have to come back to you and check. And now go do this, and then they have to come back and check. Then go do this, and then they have to come back and check. It makes them feel like they're never done. They just don't, they can't get a vision of when can I be done so that I really want to cooperate and help work on this, or are you going to be sending me off doing stuff all night? So a job list. Now with that job list, make sure that they're not all water the dog, empty the trash. Make sure that you have 1 or 2 that are a little bit more challenging, that take more than 2.5 minutes to do. Vacuum the stairs. You know, do something that's a little bit more difficult. As you work job lists and they get used to them, as my children would get older, more junior high age, and I was not going to be home when they came home. Usually I tried to be, but occasionally I wasn't. I would say, you make your job list when you get home, and I will check it when I get home. So they had to write down 4 or 5 jobs that they were going to do, and they knew that if at least 2 of them weren't more challenging, that they would get those opportunities after I got home. So they would, you know, they wanted to be the first one to write their list, because they wanted you have to realize with 9 kids, that's 45 jobs, and if you don't get the best ones first, you were a little bit out of luck. So, you know, I think other families have had a great deal of success, and you can do this. There's no right way here. There's no right way of having lists of jobs for a week. So on Monday you do this, on Tuesday you do this, and on Wednesday, and they're posted. And a lot of people will hook allowance to how well and your attitude and if jobs get done. And if you do them all and you do them well, you get X amount, and if you don't, then I subtract X amount. Any of those things are good. Any of them are good. I am a real advocate for a job list so they can see what needs to be done.
One of the things that we did with our kids, because we have a really wide range of kids, like we have 5 years between each of our kids, and so one of the things that we did is we went through our house and we did a list of all of the different jobs that there were. And the harder the job was, the more point value it had. And so then, depending on their age, was the number of job points that they had to do. So in other words, if they wanted to do 10 one-point jobs, like they could go unload the dishwasher and they could get the mail and they could water the flowers, they could do 10 of those, or they could pick 2 that were harder, longer-term jobs. And it worked for us for several reasons, because if we had a 10-year-old and said you have 10 job points to do, and we had a 5-year-old and said you have 5 job points to do, the point value was the same amount based on their age and abilities. And the 5-year-old could pick one job that was a 5-point job, and it would take them the same amount of time it took them to do 10. And so we did that for a super, super long time, and they knew what every job was worth in our home. And sometimes they would go through and do all the 1-point ones, which was fine with me, because then the only ones that were left were just 2 or 3 jobs that didn't take me very long to finish doing, because they'd done all the other little odds and ends of stuff that take me forever to do. So it works to do different things like that, but be aware of their abilities, and don't make it too easy for them either.
Yes, don't make it too easy. But with this being said, I want you to know there's lots of practices, and there's not one that's right. What's right is the principle. Teach them to work hard. Teach them to work till a job's finished. Teach them to have wise money management skills. Now, part of teaching them to work hard is to work with them. You need to have family project jobs, which may include going and raking leaves on a widow's yard. It may include go and help somebody move. But you need to have some hard jobs that are family. The whole family goes and does. You can have yard family days where the whole family is out in the yard together, getting it ready for spring or fall or winterizing it. You need to have some projects that your whole family will do together. We'll talk more about that when we do service. If you have little people, I just want to make the suggestion that as you make out their job lists, you sprinkle it with fun jobs. So you may have, clean your bedroom and feed the dog and kiss mom and run around the backyard 2 times and do 3 somersaults interspersed between real jobs, so that it becomes fun. It should be fun. Work should have happy connotation, even though it's hard. Put on fun music. I used to like to do Newsies. I like the music in Newsies. It's upbeat, it's peppy, but have fun music. You can go online. You can get all kinds of fun children's CDs that are peppy, that are lively, that are happy, and boy, crank up the volume. Get it going. Put on music. Then they'll learn it, and then sing it together. So make working together fun, a fun time to be together. What you're focusing on is seeking to develop habits that will take them through the rest of their life. Now, the other part of your homework, I want you to watch or read Be Not Troubled from Elder Razband. That was in this conference that was just given. And I want you to do the homework on page 74. What you teach right now in this principle of learning to work will affect your children as missionaries, whether or not they can. Missions are hard. They are hard work. And I don't know a whole lot of missionaries that don't at some point in the first 6 months think about wanting to come home, because it's tougher. Sort of thinking about going on a mission is glorious and you want to and it's the right thing to do. And actually being on a mission is very, very, very hard and often thankless. You don't get the baptisms, you don't get the strokes, you don't get the, it's not a glorious kind of experience. And they need to have been taught how to do hard things. The other thing is, we are living in a very wicked world. A very, very wicked world. And if they expect things to be easy, or they expect that they have the right to have things be easy, they will be sorely disappointed and will be more susceptible to falling away from the gospel of Jesus Christ. As these times and these days move forward, I think conference brought out very clearly that these will be times of fear And there will be times of doing hard things. It is going to get harder and harder and harder to defend the gospel of Jesus Christ, as well as just the trials that we are going to go through because of calamities, because of earthquakes, because of the earth being in upheaval. And we have to teach them. They have to learn from the inside that they are capable of doing hard things. And they are capable of enduring to the end. And this is what teaching them how to work hard produces in them. Is that feeling of self-confidence that I can make it over my rocky ridge. And they will have their own personal rocky ridge. And this is where you teach them the ability, the confidence, and the desire to make that pull. I testify to you, this is a critical principle to teach our children. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.